During the Vietnam War, tens of thousands of young American men came to Canada seeking political asylum. They settled across the country, but mostly in Montreal, and they had an enormous cultural impact on our country. Now, a new movie called Oh Canada is telling their story. It stars Richard Gere, and it is in theaters tomorrow. David Homel was one of those men who settled in Canada. He eventually landed in Montreal. He joins us now from Montreal today. Good morning to you.
Hello, hello.
I'm so curious about your story. Can you take us back to the 70s? Take us back to the time of the draft. What was life like for you before you left the States?
Well, we were under, a lot of pressure, I guess. Do we go, do we not go? In my case, it was pretty simple. I'm not going. My family was against, when I say my family, my parents were against the Vietnam War, so at least I didn't have to fight at home. So it was just how I was going to figure this out. And strangely enough, here I am talking to you from Montreal. Mm-hmm. I had decided I wasn't going to Canada. I had figured out a way that I could turn 18 overseas, in this case it would be Paris, and get put into a special draft board. So I left Chicago in 1970 before my 18th birthday. I wandered around Europe for a while, went to school in France, the usual foreign student business. And I ended up in Toronto in 1975. And at that point, it was funny. There was a lot of anti-American feeling. So it wasn't a very comfortable fit. So I was happy to move down the river to Montreal about 1980 or so. And that's where I am.
And that's where you've been ever since. When you left Chicago and you headed to Europe, did you know that that was it?
Well, I wasn't thinking very far ahead. Of course, I had just turned 18, mm-hmm. and I was probably thinking about my next meal. Yeah. And, how I was going to figure out living in a foreign country. Because, when you leave your hometown, home city, home country, it's never with a happy heart. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think of all those people the Americans who say, Trump got elected, I'm going to go move to Canada. I said, yeah, like hell you are. It's a big, big adjustment, and it's never over.
I want to ask you about that. We are hearing a lot of people, we heard it the first time Donald Trump was elected, I'm going to move to Canada, whatever. Didn't pan out as a lot of people were saying it was going to. We're hearing that rhetoric again. When you hear that, what do you think?
Well, I think, no, you're not moving to Canada. First of all, most of the people who are talking that way, they're older, if I could say that, and they're not going to pick up, all their property and move to where, Toronto, Montreal, somewhere else. The people who did come here in the 60s and 70s, they were young kids, men and women both. And, they mostly had what was on their back, so it was easy to move when you don't have a lot of stuff, which is not the case of those people saying, yeah, we don't want 4 more years of Trump, we're going to go to Canada. And the other question is, of course, does Canada want those people? Right. I mean, Canada got a good deal with a lot of pretty well-educated young people. Who turned out to be pretty influential mm-hmm. and kind of an asset when it comes to immigration. I'm not quite sure that that's going to be the same case with those people who say they want to come up here now.
Well, there's certainly stricter measures now. And thinking back to you as, a young man moving to Toronto and then to Montreal and settling there, was it what you expected when you got there?
Well, I'm sorry, you guys are talking to me from Toronto, I think, so you'll excuse me, but I wasn't expecting the rather frosty reception that I got in Toronto. I talked like an American. I had a certain regional accent. It didn't go over too good. And I just didn't feel like I fit in. And it was really funny because I said something that people thought I was nuts. When I went to Montreal and, a French person said to me in French, Québécois, said, it must be tough speaking French here. And I said, no, it's no worse than speaking English in Toronto. And, that person thought I was, pulling her leg. But really, it was true. At least the language difference was, I could feel it. It was in another language. Whereas it was a continuous kind of, what can I say, miscomprehension between my English and Toronto English. Now, perhaps I had a bad attitude, perhaps I was unhappy. Perhaps I was, an angry young man, and that didn't help things either. But it turns out that Montreal was a place for me to be.
Yeah, and you've been there ever since, David. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it.
Yes, and good luck to all the Americans who want to move here.
Thank you. I do want to mention.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.